Hello, welcome to Rob, Ryan, Red, the Wrexham podcast brought to you with Red 10 People Development. Well, it was Bonfire Night, but there weren't many fireworks down at Fratton Park. Myself and Nath recording this after we've just got back from Portsmouth away. On today's podcast, we will look back at the ball draw, what it means for Wrexham as we approach the one-third stage in the season against Charlton this weekend. We'll have a preview of that game, and we'll talk all things Wrexham on today's podcast.
Rob, Ryan, Red.
Well, Nath, usually we sort of ask, how are you? We have spent a lot of time together in the last 24 hours that I feel we can almost skip these pleasantries. But for the listeners, Portsmouth away, what did you make of it as an actual place to go to and spending, 11 hours on the train with me there and back?
Yes, long time together, but I enjoyed it. You twisted our arm to go for barbecue food before the game, which wasn't, I don't think, the local delicacy, but it was nice in a sort of side street of Portsmouth. And I feel like I did well. I feel like I picked a good hotel, stumbled upon an upgrade. It was all like a classic away day. The football is usually the worst part. So it was a long old way to go. Did enjoy it. That is what it's all about, going with your mates to away days. And I wouldn't have changed that. And also, a point away from home in any league is nothing to be sniffed at. I think it is. I've seen quite a bit online today about, Portsmouth are the lowest scorers in the EFL, the joint lowest scorers. Nobody has been poorer in front of goal in the entire EFL than Portsmouth. So should we have put them away or maybe get onto the one big chance we did create? But on the night, Portsmouth had more shots on target, greater XG. They really did pepper the goal, and no surprise from a Wrexham point of view, Arthur Okonkwo was man of the match. So by the time we got to walking back to the hotel and we went the wrong way to get there, I was quite happy for a point, mate. What about you? How are you feeling now you've shaken me off for at least another few days, at least another 40 hours?
Yeah, no, I'm again pleased with it. It was a great away day. I really enjoyed going to Portsmouth. This is what it's about. I dreamt of going to these sort of places and doing it on a horrible cold. It was actually quite warm, actually, midweek in November. It was great. It's literally what I've always dreamt of. And we were getting the train from Waterloo to Fratton, and you were going through Haventon, Waterlooville, where we've played in the league. We were going through Woking. All these places. A southern away day for Wrexham was going to places you just couldn't put on a map. When we used to go to sort of Dartford and these places, and it was like, where are we? I know it's south. I don't know where I'm going. And we're going to Portsmouth, a beautiful old stadium for a decent atmosphere. Two teams just really slugging it out and getting a point. A point's fair, and this is what it's all about. Sometimes it's not, like you said, as much as we need to talk about the football, and we'll get onto it more analytically in a moment. It was just really good fun. I had a great time. I really, really enjoyed it. And it would have been better if we won, but it's a lot better that we didn't lose, isn't it, as well? So you mentioned there the standouts, really. And let's start positively. Arthur Okonkwo, because he's been on a sort of roller coaster this season. In the summer, we were saying he's the number one. Why did we sign Danny Ward? And then we saw how good Danny Ward was. And we were saying maybe Arthur Okonkwo doesn't deserve to be the starter anymore. Arthur had a difficult game. Was it Norwich away? A bit difficult. I know he made some big saves, but he also had a fault maybe for the goal. And there's a bit of discourse there about is Arthur good enough for the Championship or not? And what we've seen is just a young guy getting better every time he plays and really growing in confidence. And he was the standout at Pompey, and not just because we didn't do much from an attacking point of view. Even if we'd won that game, you'd still be saying, God, without Arthur, we wouldn't have got a win there. And he's as crucial that we got a point as any other player, isn't he? So, positive for me is Arthur Okonkwo. And Nath, I suppose the other question with Arthur is, what does it mean sort of long term? Because Danny Ward not registered at the moment. Do you think we're in a position now where Parky just says Okonkwo is the main guy for the whole season?
I think Parky probably doesn't need to say anything, because Okonkwo is the guy for the next 2 months at least. Well, I mean, 3 months, November, December, and January. Danny Ward is projected to be back at the end of January, start of February. So really, it's a moot point. Until then, I think there are going to be games this season where the goalkeeper will make a mistake. Unfortunately for him, like players further forward, or unlike players further forward, they make a mistake. There's plenty of people to cover up from, or they'll maybe get another one to rectify it. You make a mistake as a goalkeeper, it almost always leads to a goal, and the recriminations and the kind of the finger pointing is rife, right? And it's difficult to shake off when you're a young goalkeeper. His distribution, I think, is improving. It's not great still. That's still an area of his game he can work on. But we needed him last night. We needed a big goalkeeping performance, and some clubs need big goalkeeping performances every single week. There are teams that the goalkeeper finishes as player of the year, and I always think that's probably more of an indictment on the rest of the team if your goalkeeper is the best player. But last night against Portsmouth, we needed the goalkeeper, and I think Josh Murphy won the official man of the match. He was, I think, on the night probably the best attacking player out on the pitch for either side. And he, put in. There were times where as well, I think Arthur was played into trouble. Kabore maybe gave it away, or Kakache didn't quite get it right. So he wasn't massively helped by those in front of him, even though there were some really good performances that I want to get onto in that back line. But I think that performance last night, is exactly the tonic that Arthur Okonkwo needed. There's been, like you said, a lot of chatter, a lot of discourse, and you're coming away saying Arthur Okonkwo was Wrexham's best player. I think that is ideal timing going into a 3-month stretch now where we're going to be playing a lot of games.
Yeah, and again, you basically say we'll be into the final third of the season by that time that Ward might be available again. Why would you change your goalkeeper anyway? And the thing with Arthur is, and I think we always have said this, maybe his performance level isn't at the top end championship level yet. He is growing, he is learning, and that has been the case with so many of our players, I think, this season. I know that Josh Windass might say we don't need to prove anything at championship level because we've got so many championship players who've been there and done that. But there's still some key areas of that squad. You're looking at Max, you look at Lewis Brent, you look at Arthur Okonkwo, who aren't proven at championship level. So I know that for some of the more experienced players of the team, whenever we talk about Wrexham have proven themselves at championship level, they might say, well, we know we're championship players. What do you mean? But I think it's more to say Arthur's doing really well at this level now. Max looks like he's played in the championship his whole life. He is just such a gem of a player. And it was really positive, wasn't it, Nath, that it was only, 2 months ago that we were saying our defence was in crisis and we were getting torn apart and it looked like any team could score a hatful of goals against us. But right now, the defence is actually our strong point, isn't it? And Dom Hyam has been the gem, the jewel and all that. And ever since he's sort of come into the team, Wrexham just looked completely different.
I was just going to say, now Rich has got his actual audio equipment attached and he sounds beautiful as ever. Arthur, great. Like I say, you needed that before. You just need that like statement performance, right? Everyone was talking about Danny Ward at Southampton, but I really think, and I'm echoing many of the thoughts of Sutty, who wrote his match piece on Dom Hyam. I think he's so reliable. When we had the Blackburn fan on to talk about Dom Hyam, and he said, maybe not super flashy, but there's a reason he played every single minute of the championship last season. And it was funny that when he first came in and he didn't start straight away on that first game, it was kind of like, oh, maybe Hyam will be behind Cody or will be behind Max Cleworth. And it kind of made a mockery of that pretty quick. And actually, it was interesting as well, the quotes in Sutty's piece from Arthur saying that, Hyam is so valuable to him, to have him in front as the central centre-back, to be guiding him and telling him, what he's looking for in a goalkeeper, to be commanding. I think there were moments against Portsmouth where Arthur was quite bold in coming out to punch dangerous crosses away, and he did try to be as commanding as he felt comfortable to be. So I think Hyam's influence is extending beyond his own sort of accomplished performances.
I was going to ask you there, Nath. What do you think the plan was when Hyam was signed? I know Parky would say he's building a squad, but when Parky bought Hyam, he obviously, at that point, I'm not saying we've written Cody off by any means, but the plan surely would have been for Cody and Hyam to play. What do you think sort of on paper? I know it might be irrelevant, but I'm just fascinated to know, what do you think Parky's vision for the back three was this season?
I think the vision changed. I think the vision was Cody in the back three with Max and Brunt. Then I think maybe we realised we were not good enough, and that was not going to be good enough as a trio. Callum Doyle came along, and I think maybe Dom Hyam was a market opportunity quite late on in the window, and they just thought, you know what, we just need and I mean this in an endearing way, we just need a steady Eddy at the championship level who can just sit in, dictate, help improve the goalkeeper. Still got the recovery pace to not get schooled too much, can play right across the back three, left, central, right. He's comfortable in any of those roles. And boy, we've needed him at left centre back. Dan Scar's slotted in quite ably, but you would imagine that's not a long-term assignment. Obviously, Hyam's been able to got to left centre back with Brunt out for 3 months and Doyle suspended, although Doyle back on the bench for the Portsmouth game. So I think it was testament to Dan Scar more than anyone that Doyle didn't slot straight back in and they stuck with Hyam as the left-sided player. But I just think I sometimes say this about players. Some players cause you to feel jittery and nervous, and sometimes that can spill over into a goal or an assist, or they're just not quite certain what they're going to do. With Hyam, I feel so relaxed when I see him on the ball. He doesn't make many mistakes. There were a couple of stray passes at Portsmouth. There was one in particular that he did raise his hands quite quickly to say sorry, but I'm remembering that because it doesn't happen very often. It is quite noteworthy. There are teammates who make mistakes with much more regularity, and I couldn't pinpoint all of those coming back on the podcast. But with Hyam, it does feel like once or twice a game, because he's not perfect, otherwise he'd be in the Premier League, wouldn't he? But he is very, very reliable at championship level, and you can go right through the championship. There might be flashier defenders, there might be goal-scoring defenders, but in terms of just pure leadership, defending, composure, I think he will be as good as you'll find at this level.
And again, it's so priceless to maybe have that player who's just like a 7 out of 10 every single game. He's so reliable. And as you mentioned there, he's just this calming presence, and that reflects then to Arthur. It makes Max more assured and maybe gives Max a bit more confidence to do what he knows he can do. He's not playing within himself because he knows, I can take a risk here on my distribution because I've got Dom beside me. And I think we saw that with Lewis Brunt as well. Again, credit to Dan Scar, because it's an unenviable task, I think, for him as well. The way his Wrexham career has been, he's been in and out of the team. And again, he's always sort of parachuted in when we need him and the stakes are high, and he always does a job. And that's a real good sort of mark of consistency as well. And
I think, Rich, I was going to say quickly, I think that game did suit Dan Scar quite a lot. And I'm not trying to be disparaging, but it was more of a head it, kick it type game, I felt, away at Portsmouth. Dan Scar's job description on the night, I think, was pretty straightforward. The real threat, Colby Bishop didn't do a lot, I don't think. I don't think he really, really threatened. That's created Dan Scar. There was Connor Chaplin was giving Kikache a quite difficult time, was obviously working on Hyam as well. Didn't get loads of change out of them, I didn't think. And on the other side, Josh Murphy up against Kabore and Max, that is a tough assignment. That was the toughest assignment of the night, and I think they did about as good a job as you could have hoped for in a game where they were looking to bounce back from a 4-0 defeat to Birmingham, and their tails were up, and the crowd were trying to roar them on, particularly in that second half when they really went through the motions. But I think Scar, in particular, Colby Bishop's solid at this level, and he was able to be pretty agricultural, which suited his game. You weren't asking him to play out from the back. You weren't asking him to spray, diagonals to Windass or up to Moore. It was pretty clear. And let's remember that he came to Wrexham having been written off as a championship player. At Portsmouth were like, we don't want you, basically. You're not going to be good enough to play in the championship for us. Or you're no longer good enough for second tier football. So for him to come in, anchor a back three that got a clean sheet last night, they all played a massive role. I think Max has been great in recent weeks. I really do. And And if anything, I thought the 3 centre-backs were better than the wing-backs, who we love to give our flowers to when it goes well. But I really thought the back three were probably the most impressive unit out on the pitch for Wrexham on Wednesday night.
I guess that, is it Sir Alex Ferguson quote that attack wins your games, but defence wins your championships, and maybe that will win us the championship one day as well, because just to keep a clean sheet is huge. And I know from a selfish fan perspective, if we're going to draw, maybe we want a 4-4 or something, and we want some mega excitement. But from Parky's point of view, if you're going to draw a game, 0-0's perfect because you've kept a clean sheet. And he would have taken a point, I think, beforehand. And again, what is important, I think, now, Nath, before we get onto other individuals, is if you look at this spell of games between the 2 international breaks that we would have looked at, and you would have said, how many points are Wrexham going to get from there? And this isn't being pessimistic, but the fact we had Stoke, and then we had Coventry as well. You know, so difficult the way those games have fallen for us. And Middlesbrough, you know, you've played 3 of the very best teams in the Championship, and you probably say whatever happens on Saturday, we are ahead of where many people thought we would have been points wise from this batch of games. So the Portsmouth point, you know, to take 4 points from Coventry and Portsmouth, whatever order that comes in, is a fantastic, you know, that's a fantastic return, isn't it? So, yeah, I think it's far more positive than sort of negative after that 0-0 draw. And both teams will probably felt they could have won it. Do you want to jump in before we get onto why Wrexham might feel they could have won that game?
Yes, I was just going to say that the tweet I put out, the 5, me talking about tweets this week is funny, but the one tweet I am talking about is when we put 5 games out, which was Oxford, Middlesbrough, Coventry, Portsmouth, and Charlton, which is this coming weekend. And, you know, every 5 games we put that tweet out, don't we, Rich, that just says, how many points do you think Wrexham will take out of the next 15 available in the league? And so at that point, you're going into it. Coventry were the league leaders. Middlesbrough was second. Oxford, okay, people were hopeful there, but at that point we hadn't won a league game at home. So remember, you're putting your predictions in before this, and after the kind of doom and gloom at Stoke, Portsmouth away, you know, who really knew what that was going to be like? And Charlton have been the best of the promoted side so far, right? So a lot of people coming back saying, well, maybe 4, maybe 5. You know, the expectations were incredibly low. You get that win against Oxford, you can back that up with a draw against Middlesbrough, beat Coventry, that's 7, plus the point against Portsmouth, that's 8. You know, 8 already out of 15 is looking decent, and we haven't even played the last one, right? So 8 out of 12 is very, very solid when you think of the quality of opposition. You played first and second in the league. Oxford, you know, knocked off Derby, who have won what 4 in a row or something. So they might look on paper like not a very good team. They go and beat Bristol City, for example, and they're one of the good teams in the division. And then Portsmouth, you know, they're very difficult to predict. Like I say, 19 shots against Wrexham. That's not really a formula for success. If you're Phil Parkinson, you don't want 19 shots on goal. But you know, you've come away with a clean sheet, and yeah, I mean, look, in 2 of those games, you know, you clean sheet against Oxford, clean sheet against Portsmouth. You absolutely could have won that Middlesbrough game. I know coulda, shoulda, woulda, but you know, you absolutely could have won that Middlesbrough game. That Kiefer header goes in, and probably a clean sheet there as well. In the land of hypothetical, and then obviously you get the great win over Coventry. So yeah, in isolation, there was some. Don't get me wrong. Coming out of Fratton Park, there were some grumbles behind me. People coming out saying that was crap. Like, we haven't really, and that is just inevitable. That is just fandom of any sport, right? Yeah. Like, you just want to win all the time.
You can't be, when you've travelled all that way on a Wednesday night and you've seen a really boring 0-0 game, you're allowed to be, oh, that was a bit crap, but you're also allowed to
definitely.
That's absolutely fine. Because
like I said last week, like you support and boo and do what you want, like whatever you want. However, we've all travelled hundreds and hundreds of miles, but I think when you package it up with the other games in this span, I think we've had a really good little run.
I'd say right now I'm sort of sticking by the pre-season prediction that we'll finish about 10th or 11th, and I think that's absolutely fine. That is such a huge mark of progress, and that would be, of course, our best ever finish as a football club, 161 years. So, you know, you've got to look at the context of that. I think sometimes you really want to run before you can walk. particularly the journey we've been on, and you just need to take a step back and say, God, like I said, I used to dream of going to watch us play Portsmouth, and now we're going there, and I'm disappointed that maybe we got a 0-0 draw. But it's a very good time to be a Wrexham fan. If we're going to be our usual pessimistic, whiny, entitled, Disney dollar, spoilt little brats, Nath, who know nothing, don't look like they can talk about tactics, can't much anything. We did have one very good chance, though, at Fratton Park, and it's been a bit of a common theme that Lewis O'Brien in one-on-one situations does not equate to a goal. It almost feels like with each chance that goes by, his confidence drops a little bit again, and he sort of he sort of overthinks things, I think, maybe to a degree, and overcomplicates it, where if a ball fell to Lewis O'Brien and he had a split second to think, he scores a goal, I think. But it's when he's got that time to finish and he's through one-on-one goal and he's probably thinking, here we go again. What went wrong last time? What can I do this time? And at Fratton Park, he had Wrexham's best chance, gets through one-on-one and fires straight at the goalkeeper. Okay, he did a lot better than I would have done in a one-on-one situation. But Lewis O'Brien, is it a positive that he's getting into all these positions, or can we expect more from a player we signed from the Premier League and has now got a bit of a reputation for not scoring one-on-ones?
Two things can be true. I think both those things can be true. I want to first say that Lewis O'Brien has been great. You know, I would say one of Wrexham's best players this season. You'd say Kiefer, Windass, they've all had really good little spells and moments. You know, O'Brien, like you say, he didn't have a lot of time to think at Millwall when he just chipped the keeper with a lovely finish from James McLean's pass that iced the game for us. There have been other moments where he has been through and they maybe haven't passed him the ball. And again, I'm thinking of Millwall. There was one incident in particular where he would have scored. It would have been a tap in. So, yeah, he has played very, very well. And there is more to his game. You know, he is not a striker. Strikers are judged on goal output. I know we give Kiefer a lot of credit for other areas of his game, but 99% of forwards are judged on their goal output. That is just the nature of the beast. Midfielders, it's more nuanced, but I think you have to be honest. And I think it's only fair. You know, if you're going to criticize a goalkeeper on saves or punches, or you know, you're going to judge a wide player on their crossing, you should be allowed to judge, and you should judge an attacking midfielder on their finishing ability when they get the chance. And you know, I know I copped a bit of flack for only because I've been watching the games, and it was maybe a bit foolish timing wise to put it out after Coventry when I showed some of Lewis O'Brien's misses. But it just really struck me that the sample size is quite big now. You know, against Southampton, against Norwich, against Birmingham, against Leicester, against Portsmouth. You know, and in those games, Birmingham, it would make it 2-0. It well could ice the game there. They were really on the ropes at that point. Leicester, you know, that would have got us back into the game sooner. Would that have, I mean, it would have changed the complexion of the game. Whether we'd have gone on to win that, you know, who knows? We don't know. Southampton, you know, he had that really long run, just ran out of steam. You could also point to Ryan Hardy, wasn't alone in that game of missing a gilt-edged opportunity. Norwich, we ended up going on to win the game. He did play really well that day, so it didn't really come back to bite you. But you're looking at a game like Portsmouth, whereby Wrexham created one quote-unquote big chance based on Opta's statistics. That was it. And Wrexham missed it. There was no other, you know, really what they would term a high-level big chance. And ultimately, I said it before, pressure is a privilege. Like the higher up you go, that the sort of the fresher the flowers, or the bigger the bouquet when it goes well for you. But you know, the brighter the spotlight when it doesn't either. And I do just think he's not above critique, right? And I would say last night you knew there was a collective intake of breath in the away end, that they knew that was not going to go in. And whether that was good goalkeeping, poor finishing, a mixture of the two. And it might even itself out. It might come, we might be getting to the January transfer window where we go, we scored like his last 5 1-on-1s and don't know what we were worried about. But also on the flip side, you have to wonder that if this trend keeps going on, 2 points, 2 points, 2 points, if you're dropping them in draws, they add up. And whether it's this season or next season or whatever, like ultimately you are only going to get a finite number of chances in a game, particularly away from home. And unlike in League Two, where we might get 3, 4, 5 of those, in the Championship you might get 1, might get 2. And Lewis O'Brien scores that we win 1-0. That's arguably the perfect away performance. It's arguably the most disciplined, efficient performance on the road, 200 plus miles away, and you get out of there with 3 points. Ultimately, you don't draw 1-1. Oh, you draw 0-0. Sorry, didn't even get a goal. You draw 0-0, and it's not bad, but the sample size, I don't know. What do you think? The sample size for me is big enough that this is an actual area of concern to me.
It's certainly a trend, isn't it? And like you said there, that in some games it might not cost you, but just by the nature of the level we're competing at now, I felt like last season we were obviously the reason we finished second. I think there were so many games where not much happened, but we took our chance and the opponents didn't take their chance. I think of Huddersfield away, where I still don't know how we won that. We score a horrible goal, but I don't care about it. Wickham away, Okonkwo makes a great save. Sam Smith scores that goal. We win, and they are huge moments in the season. This season, I think because we'll be mid-table, sort of regardless of even maybe an extra win or two, that it's fine. It's not as costly. But like you said, if next season you're making a promotion push, there's going to be so many games that are just decided on one chance. And I know, again, like you said, people can say that at any single level, but I think in the Championship it's paramount. There'll be a chance where if we take it, we get a win. If we don't, then we get a draw. And that can be the difference when you're going for a promotion come the end of it. So it's, like I said, I'm encouraged that you're getting into these positions so consistently, and his runs from deep are amazing. I also feel that maybe if he scores 1, then 1-1-1. I know he scored the header as well against Derby, but I think if he scores a 1-on-1, it might just be that weight off his shoulders. So I'm seeing it more as a positive that he's doing good work. But like you said, if we'd lost at Portsmouth, we'd probably be saying that was the chance. Why didn't we score it? And we'd be a bit more critical as well.
Look, he's an incredibly high-level footballer, and he definitely is. He's played at Premier League, MLS, played at all over the world at top level. And I know that when he watches the film sessions, he'll be frustrated that his decision making hasn't been there in the decisive moment. But you keep saying, or you said a few times in this podcast about we're going to be mid-table, we will be mid-table, we're destined for mid-table. But, 1 or 2 of those one-on-ones go in, and suddenly, you're 6 points better off. And then you might be in the playoffs right now, you might be a point off. And like not a lot had to have changed from what we've done to then be, and if we're having this conversation where, I don't know, we're 6th in the table or 7th in the table, based on that one singular moment, that insular moment, I don't necessarily think you would be so defiant. And that's probably how I think the squad are looking at it. Like, yeah, right now we might be 14th, or had we lost, we'd have been, 16th, 17th, or if we'd have won, we'd have been 11th. Like, it's still fluctuating for a while. And I do just think that they'll want to get to January, and maybe this is one for the next segment, but when they get to January, if they can just be within a touching distance, then like a home run of the playoffs, I think they'll roll the dice. So, Rich, as I was just mentioning in that previous segment, it kind of got me thinking that we've seen this Wrexham team quite a lot now, home and away, various partnerships, and different players have come in and out, different personnel. I guess watching last night and with that close margin, that margin for error is so small between a win, a draw, and a loss. If you're Wrexham and you're getting to January and we're within 6 points of the playoffs, say, because we're not a million miles off right now, are we? What is this team missing? What does this team need? do you think?
It needs to somehow clone Kiefer Moore, Nath. I'm not sure how we're going to do it, but that's what we need because, again, I do feel that most of our games depend on does Kiefer score a goal to Wrexham win? And obviously against Coventry, he has a sensational game, gets the hat-trick, we win that game. But for me, we are just so fundamentally reliable on Kiefer in both boxes. That was the same at Portsmouth. He was excellent as an actual defender, Kiefer Moore from set pieces. Again, didn't have the best of luck in the final third himself. But I just feel that we are so over-reliant on him in attack. And that's not a problem in the sense that every team's going to rely on their best striker. There's always a drop-off without your best striker. But I just don't think any other striker at the club just is the same mould and same target man and same hold-up guy that Kiefer Moore is. And I know Kiefer doesn't maybe do the hold-up that Ollie Palmer did, but I just feel you need that target, that focal point in the forward line, and we just don't have it. And again, against Portsmouth, if you bring in Sam Smith on in the 85th minute, why don't you just play... I think for that sub, for me, what annoyed me was either play Kiefer for the full 90, like what's that extra 5 minutes going to make difference-wise, or put Sam Smith or Hardy on the hour mark and do something different for a big chunk of the game. Like putting Sam Smith on for within 5 + 3 added on time, 8 minutes. There was no real opportunity for him to do anything anyway, or for it to influence our game that much. So I just feel that, again, this is me being... I think when you're building a team, there comes a point where you have to take an educated risk and a bit of a gamble with your squad investment. That's fine. But what I fear is, I've said it before, Kiefer Moore will play for us again on Saturday. He'll probably play at least 80 minutes, you'd say, against Charlton. He then goes away with Wales. He'll definitely play, you'd say, about 100 minutes across both matches, you'd expect. And then he comes back and he plays 2 games a week for Wrexham all over the winter period. And then the March internationals will be crucial for Wales trying to get to the World Cup. So we're playing them as well. Just the pressure and the workload and output on him is unsustainable, I think. And the amount of yellow cards he gets just from jumping in the air, there could become a suspension, and there could just be a niggly injury or might not be fully fit. And without him, I just still don't think this Wrexham team has got anything else. We've got, like, worst comes to worst, Burton in for Okonkwo. There's a bit, I think you can cope with that for 3-4 games. In defence, Hyam's the one who stands out the most, but even if Hyam was out, and you've got Doyle, Max, Cody, or Scar, I think you can cope. Midfield, we've got an abundance of options. Wing-backs, there's still a drop-off from Kabora and Kakache, but also I think Kabora and Kakache were poor against Portsmouth, really. So, you probably still win games with Longman and Barney if you really have to. But I just don't think Wrexham right now can really replace Kiefer Moore. For me, he's still the guy in the team where it's not even that there's a massive drop-off. There is just no actual comparable alternative to him. I just think. So do you agree? Do you think there's another position that's more crucial?
Yeah, I agree that a forward would be what I would go for. If you're within that touching distance and you think, you know what, this is not a panic move because it's not a one and it's not this season or no season, but you know, opportunities come up. Look at League One, right? League One, it kind of opened up for us and we were like, oh, this can be done this season. And they went and got Sam Smith and they went and got Jay Rodriguez and they went for it. They changed the system and we're just like, right, sorry if we bruise any egos along the way, but this is how it's going to have to be and get there. And, you know, if we get to January and there's a bruised ego or two that we get someone in and so be it, I think that will just have to be the case, right? Like clearly behind the scenes right now, there are a couple of bruised egos and some of those have gone out on loan and some of them, you know, may well go in January as well to mix up the squad a little bit. I just felt last night that Kiefer is going to start every game he's fit to start. Yeah. Every game he's fit and available, he will start and get at least an hour, if not more. You'll want more out of him. I just felt last night that if Wrexham had a striker with genuine pace, I know this might sound like a broken record because we've done that before. Nathan Broadhead isn't what I mean. I mean like an actual number 9 that maybe is a decent frame, but doesn't need to be Kiefer, but just someone whose main trait is stretching is running in behind, is playing on the shoulder of the last defender. And that way you can maybe put a ball over the top. Maybe you can just play a bit more of a risky through ball. And the likelihood is you think your man will win that And I felt like against Portsmouth, for all the good Kiefer did in his own box, and at times in the opposition box, he had a good header in the first half that was well saved or cleared off the line. It was at the other end. I actually feel like I kind of disagree with you and think maybe you need a different profile to Kiefer. Because I think Sam Smith is fine. I think Hardy is fine. But I think they're just fine. I think you need a bit more than fine to be at the top end of this level. You know, we've seen with Thomas Asante, I know he didn't do it against us, or Hadji Wright, or Joe Gelhard, who I've wanted for ages. He's doing the business at Hull. Carlton Morris is doing incredibly well at Derby. There is just a level to the type of player that you need. And so I think if they get to January, I think the striker market becomes incredibly interesting because I don't expect Jay Rodriguez to pull on a Wrexham shirt again. Hardy seems like his options are incredibly limited now. His next start might be the FA Cup in January, which sounds crazy, and that might be harsh, but it's difficult to see how he would get a start as things are right now. Sam Smith is an able deputy that people have wanted to see get more minutes. He got the start against Cardiff, was being flogged essentially with the service he was getting, and then not really to be seen again from the off. So I just think you want a real pace player, and I'm sure the club are looking at who they can find out there. And I will say I've written a piece recently about Hearts. When I went to Scotland and I wrote about Hearts at St Mirren, and they signed a striker from the Norwegian second division, Claudio Braga. Now, if anyone's been on social media in the past 2 weeks, the Claudio Braga chant from the Hearts fans to the tune of Radio Gaga has gone mega viral, 7 million views or something. So I'm sure you'll have heard it if you're chronically online like I am. But they plucked him from the Norwegian second division, and he's gone up in value 10 times based on what they paid for him, and has so many components. And I'm not saying that that's the guy for Wrexham or whatever. I'm just saying that in every corner there is immense value if you're looking for very specific traits. And as Wrexham get bigger and bigger and bigger, and the scouting network expands, the players that are out there can be so valuable. So yeah, it's Kiefer Moore right now. That is plan A. That will be plan A. But a kind of last line striker on nights like Portsmouth, I think could have given you an edge to go on and win the game.
Right, Nath. Charlton at home. Those rousing memories of that day of promotion. The Circus was in town, but Wrexham were no clowns. And Nathan Jones is back this weekend. Charlton, fair play to them. They've exceeded many people's expectations already this campaign. One of the feel-good stories of the Championship. And ahead of the game, we caught up with close friend of the podcast, Tash Everitt, who does some work for TalkSport. And this is what she had to say as the Circus comes back this weekend.
Okay, Tash, we were just slagging off Rich off air, which, I'm going to say to him to his face, he should have been on here with us, but he's not. So Tash, who does great work, previously been on the podcast, does great stuff with CharltonLive as well. Good time to be a Charlton fan. I probably wouldn't have said that when we were gloating and having our great day and when Wrexham sealed promotion. But hey, Charlton got the job done, joined us. The one promoted team I would say that everyone from outside Charlton was probably thinking like, oh, they're not really relevant. Like it's all about Birmingham, it's all about Wrexham. And yet the best promoted team, not an opinion, but a fact so far is Charlton. How's it been so far?
Absolutely, as you just said, I think it's taken us all by surprise. Particularly even going up last season, I left the country to go backpacking, which is a decision that I made last year, probably about like July time. And as it got closer and closer to me leaving in January, I thought, oh, that was a good decision. Like, we're not going to do anything this season because we were like 10th. Obviously I missed watching the football, but I was like, we're not going to do anything. And then as time went on and on, I was like, right, okay, maybe we're actually going to mount a challenge here, and we went up. So yeah, no complaints from me. Even though I missed it, I was in Bali for the playoff final. But you're in Bali and you win at Wembley. It's not a bad combination, so I can't complain too much. And it means that I came back for Championship football, which is something as a club we have been absolutely dying for, because we were down in League One for 5 years. It's been a long time since we've been in the Champ, and it's somewhere that we love. I'm sure you guys will say the same thing. It's a brilliant league to be in. It's much more competitive. We'll get onto this, but every game you go into is different. You never know what to expect. Every club is competitive, especially this year. It feels like it's completely wide open, and it's just been a joy, to be honest with you. We beat West Brom in the 95th minute on Tuesday, despite having, I think it's fair to say, probably our worst performance of the season. But it's moments like that 95th minute winner from Sonny Carey that has sort of summed up our season, in that, oh, we can compete at this level, and we are doing that. And that is credit to Nathan Jones and the recruitment team, because they have basically built out the team that won us promotion last season, added in some more experience and maybe a few more flair players, if you like. And here we are. So we're enjoying every moment. We're not getting too carried away of ourselves, because we know that football is a long old season. We've not won the league. We're not in the playoffs. It's only November, but I think our mentality is very much just enjoy it. Just enjoy every game as it comes.
Yeah, I think I just think it's probably the perfect combination for somebody like Nathan Jones to be like, nobody believes in us, nobody rates us. Our business is not super flashy. Like, getting people like Harvey Nibbs is just like solid recruitment, and he got a late goal against somebody as well, didn't he? Which was
Watford on the
quite,
opening day. Yeah,
there you
yeah.
go, Watford. I just feel as well, like, having worked down in London and done Charlton previously, we're in the Championship, and obviously we went down to the Valley, and that was incredibly annoying how we blew that game. That was like one of the most jarring games we went to. But you can like sense an opportunity, right? Like, it does feel like Charlton have maybe been the masters of their own downfall in terms of, previously with ownership and maybe just some poor decisions. But like, there's a big club there waiting to figure it out. And, you guys must be hoping now that the pieces are bit by bit being put back in place.
Absolutely. I mean, as you said, it has felt like it's been a long time coming. It's been so frustrating as a fan base, because, as you said, that club that have been in the Premier League, and even as an established Championship side, you've got that core fan base there. Like, it's not easy being a club in London when you're in League One, because what is your selling point? Because you've got people down the road from you, unless you're like me and your whole family has supported Charlton and it's a core thing that you all do together with your friends or whatever. It's hard to persuade those people that would otherwise go to a West Ham, or, dare I say it, Crystal Palace, or any of those other teams that are offering Premier League and now sometimes European football for not that much more, possibly the same price. It's difficult. And I think a big worry for us over the years was, how long are we going to spend down here, and how many people are we going to miss out on? And what's been so refreshing about going back up, and it's not a case of, where were you when you were blank? It's just, we now have that appeal to other people that maybe stopped going when we were in League One, because, to be fair, it was pretty dire at times. And I don't blame people. I'm sure you guys feel the same. I don't blame those people for not wanting to go, because it was so disheartening. You watched a club that, where, for those of us who are a little bit older, will remember that we were a model club at times in the Premier League. If you look at Brentford now, that is basically what we used to be. And so dropped from that so far down to League One, and, being the protesting fans and all this, that and the other. I think it's been so refreshing to see that there is still that appetite for people to come. And, we're not selling out every week. These things are going to take time. And I think that is our overall perspective of being promoted is, great, we're back in the Championship. That's what we've wanted. We're going to put some money into the team. We're not expecting to blow people out of the water with fees and, be spending crazy, but it's done sensible recruitment. We've got a manager that really understands the club and knows the fan base inside out, and that knows exactly how to manage in this league. And I think there have been a lot of occasions this season, with West Brom being a particular example. I might be being slightly harsh on Ryan Mason here, because this is the first time as a number one, et cetera, but that last 10 minutes for me of that game summed up Nathan Jones and how important he is for us, not just as a character and bringing people in and, you know, driving that ethos of the club of being a winning club again and losing this losing mentality. But it was that decision when the 10 minutes, Ryan Mason went, all right, we're going to make a more defensive substitution. We're just going to get the point. And Nathan was like, I don't care who you are. You could be Real Madrid, West Brom, whatever. We're going to go for it. And that's why we have scored so many late goals. I think out of every team in the 92, we are top for late goals by quite some margin past the 90-minute mark, because this team just doesn't know when to stop. So yeah, it's been brilliant. It feels like it's been a long time coming. And as I said, like, the expectation at the moment is just to settle and solidify ourselves in this division. And if we can do that, then that's great. And anything above that is just, yeah, I'm pinching myself really, because it's been a long time coming.
There are quite a few subplots at Charlton, one of which I love the fact Lloyd Jones went on a dating show and is now sort of like one of the most like influencer couples, and yet he's a good footballer as well. Like he's not a rubbish footballer. He's great, and I'm forgetting her name now, but a lady who was on Love Island, they're now some sort of influencer couple, which is really funny to me. And yeah, I guess I was going to, and obviously the Nathan Jones saga with the whole Circus thing, we'll get onto that shortly. But just talk to me about the recruitment. I've obviously seen some of the names that came in. I think Bree is a really smart pickup that you made, but maybe just talk us through some of the players that you picked up and who people might have missed you signing.
Yeah, so we brought James Bree in from loan from Southampton. That's unfortunately only till January, but that's partly because I believe his deal expires in the summer. Southampton are basically gone, you can have him for now, but we want to get some money for him in January. It reminds me to see what happens with that one, but he's been great. We were looking for another right wing back / right back. We needed to fill that gap after Thierry Small went to Preston for free in the summer. He did give him contract offers, but he didn't want to stay with Charlton. I think Preston offered him more money, and yeah, hopefully that does a fair assessment of that one. So we brought James Bree in. He's been brilliant. Rob Apter had been playing in his position before he arrived. He came from Blackpool. He's obviously more attacking minded, so that's why Bree's been put in the side, because we are very much a defence first team. You'll see that on Saturday. We're missing two of our defenders, actually, Reece Burke and Amari Bell. Burke hasn't always started, but they have been key for us. And Josh Edwards, our left wing back, is also missing. So, but we are still a defensive first side, and you will see that. But Apter came in from Blackpool with Sonny Carey, whose name I'm sure you guys must have heard of by now, because he's just popping up and scoring some ridiculous goals. We have missed having a attacking mid like that for a very long time. The goal, I'm going to bring up West Brom again, but the goal he scored against them, he basically, we had put in a crap corner in the 95th minute, and Kerry was the last man, like, basically to stop a West Bromwich Albion counter-attack, and he just nicked the ball off of their advancing player and just went at goal from distance, and that's how we won. But he's been an amazing pickup. He cost nothing as well, which is crazy. He's our top scorer, and a lot of Blackpool fans were sort of trying to tell us that he probably won't be able to make the step up, and he's made them look a bit silly. We've all been there. Who else we brought in? We brought in Charlie Kelman, which is probably one of the more eye-catching buys that we did in the summer. Brought him in from QPR, but he was obviously on loan at Leyton Orient last season, as you guys probably would have come across him. Obviously, he was Golden Boot winner. So on paper, that's been a very good signing. Same with Harvey Nibbs, brought him in from Reading. Harvey Nibbs probably hasn't had enough game time for us to really make an assessment of him, but what I have seen of him, the late goal against Watford, came on Tuesday, had a really good impact. So I think, you know, he would love to be in the starting 11, but Sonny Carey is keeping him out at the moment. Hillman has scored one goal this season. Now, if you're looking at that from an outsider's perspective, you might think, oh, that's not quite what you thought you were spending the money on. But again, as you'll see on Saturday, we don't play to our striker's strengths a lot of the time. A lot of the time, they're having to come back and do the dirty work and allowing other people to come forward and make those attacks. So if you're looking at Charlie Kelman's XG, whether you like it or not, a lot of the chances he's had, like, they're not very clear cut. He's had very few chances. The ones that he has had, it's always been on target most of the time. And then the one against Swansea in the 1-1 the other week came off, and that was his first goal. So And then in true Charlton fashion, he then picked up an injury after that, so he didn't play on Tuesday. But I don't know if he'll be available. Nathan Jones tends to keep his cards so close to his chest. So yeah, we'll see about that one for Saturday. But and in terms of other pickups, there have been others, but it's now escaped my brain. But yeah, long story short, Thomas Kaminski's another one, and all the other Luton players like Amari Bell and Reece Burke, as Nathan Jones likes to point out, they're not Luton players, they're his players. But they, to be fair, I understand people looking at it and going, oh, well, it's a bit like John Eustace getting his players from Blackburn. It's like, oh, well, they're his mates, so you just bring him in. But that is not the case at all. Genuinely, every player that has come in from Luton has impressed me. And likewise, the guys that have made the step up from League One. It's just been a great gel between what we had previously and what we have now. Tanto Alafe is another one. Probably hasn't had enough game time to really see what he can do, and he'll be wanting more. But yeah, a very good selection of players from League One, coupled with people making their own step up from our original team, plus people that have already had experience at this level. So it's been great.
Yeah, I think you built a squad, a really nice blend of squad. And like I say, a squad that probably doesn't come with huge expectation externally. So you're able to just be free. And you got players like Sonny Carey, who we remember from Kings Lynn, and has risen up the leagues really, really well and done really well. Nathan Jones is obviously incredibly interesting just as an individual. Always comes out with incredible sound bites. You tweet out some of the best of them for me, so I can indulge those in my bookmarks for a while. But Phil Parkinson doesn't like Nathan Jones. I think that's pretty obvious. I've been in Phil Parkinson press conferences, on and off the microphone. Is not a fan of Nathan Jones. That's not new to Nathan Jones. He likes to rub people up the wrong way, and he's fine with that. He can live with that. He basically wrote Wrexham's team talk on that day with the whole Circus thing and tried to row it back, but the cat was out the bag. How motivated do you think he'll be, though? Because obviously it is just the worst place to be when you're there, when a team gets to have their full sort of like celebration and promotion day. Obviously you do get it a couple of weeks later in great fashion as well. You get to win the playoff final. But going back, for us, it'll bring great memories. But for Charlton, even if it's a different group, I would imagine for Nathan Jones, it's hugely motivating that.
100%. I mean, I think where we are at the moment as well, because the league is so wide open, I think we go there thinking, blimey, if we could pick up a result here, then we'll be very pleased with that. Because I didn't think we were going to beat West Brom. So I think that's slightly alleviated, not the pressure, because there isn't any pressure around us and Nathan Jones, because we're basically just saying this is a free hit, go and enjoy yourself the whole season. So, but it does mean that instead of it being 4 games without a win and all this, that, and the other, then a draw or whatever, it means we can probably go into it with a little bit less like pressure than we would have done. Having said that, I'm sure that he will really enjoy winning there if he does win, and will have that in his mind. I think every single game, I'd like to think, despite the comments last year, I think he does go into every game thinking, just try and focus on ourselves and all this, that, and the other. Obviously, I completely understand why you guys took those comments and ran, because when it happened to us with Birmingham, when Bielik decided, he's actually our former player, he used to be on loan with us, but he was saying, we're better than this, we're better than the Championship and than League One, sorry, and we should be in the Championship and this, that, and the other. And Nathan Jones basically said to the players, you saw what he said, now you can fire yourselves up for that and prove them wrong. And we did. And unfortunately, Nathan Jones didn't follow that philosophy when that happened with you guys. But, obviously he'll say that he didn't quite mean it in the horrible way that it probably came across in the press. But yeah, I'm sure he learnt a lesson from that day, as did all the Charlton fans. Will not look back on that game fondly. I think especially because that was a time when automatics was still a thing for us, ridiculously, because it would have been completely wild if we had done it, but I think it was a real crash back down to earth to be like, do you know what, guys? Yeah, and do you know what, it probably did us a favour in the long run, because sometimes, I'm sure you guys know, like, you need that reality check, and you need to be like, yeah, we're great and we know we could be really good on our day, and I hope that's the version that turns up on Saturday. But you do need those moments sometimes when you're on that good run to be like, okay, we're not, it's not a guarantee that we're going to turn up and walk over people. So, but yeah, I think I didn't realise quite how much Parky didn't like Nathan Jones. I'm sure Nathan Jones will also be thinking about the fact that, you know, he's a Cardiff fan and this, that and the other. And obviously you guys played them the other week. And I did think to myself, I bet you he's watching this for two reasons, because he's keeping an eye on you and also because of the Cardiff element. So it's, do you know what though? It is weird. And I was thinking to myself earlier, it's been suspiciously quiet before this game, because you think before the Charlton home game, don't get me started on the scarves. That and all the furore around that, and then obviously it was on TV. You had bloody Mark Goldbridge doing a live stream and all this, that, and the other, which I forgot about too earlier, thankfully. And then obviously last time with the Circus comments, so I'm like, God, it's suspiciously quiet. But yeah, hopefully it won't be a 0-0 and a boring game. I'm sure it won't be.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, I'd forgotten a lot about the half and half scarves and it basically sold out and Mark Goldbridge, and then I was just trying to blank that out. Us giving away a penalty in the last second of the game, that was awful. And then obviously the home game definitely, circus or no circus, it was set up for us, right? Win and you're up, and that's a completely different prospect this time around. It is just a game in early November ahead of a long season. I guess the last question was just going to be, you know, you've seen plenty of matches this season with Charlton. Who's been the best team that you've seen? Obviously, you went on won away at Ipswich. Obviously, everyone thought they would be like runaway leaders. That's not the case. Southampton have sat Will still. West Brom probably the best team for us, and obviously you've gone and beaten them, and they weren't great by the sounds of it against you guys. Just wondered who you thought was probably the best team you've played.
Well, you're not going to expect my answer because of the score, but one of them was Ipswich. Because in the first half, I turned around to my dad and I was like, if we can get out of this with a 0-0, I'll be ecstatic, because it was relentless. And I mean, they weren't the best quality chances you've ever seen, but it was, they did dominate us in the first half. We had a few chances on the counter, and I didn't think we were completely dead and buried, but I just thought that Ipswich looked class above on the ball and with what they were creating, like Jack Clark in particular. I just, every time he got the ball, I was like, this is really uncomfortable. And we haven't really had many games like that this season, to be honest. So, and then second half, I don't know what Nathan Jones said at half time. Obviously, we just came out and I think just completely stunned them, to be honest. And I think that we scored 3 goals in very quick succession, and they just didn't really know what to do about it. I think defensively they were quite weak, I want to say. Probably not weak on balance compared to other people, but if you're comparing it to their attack, that is their weak point, and we clearly exploited that. So, but yeah, they impressed me still going forward. And the other team was Swansea, because again, I probably would have said we picked up a point against them at the weekend. It was 1-1. Obviously, Kelman scored first, and then Adam Ida scored for them. And they were saying, the fans were saying to us on our podcast before the game, that they're a side that have a lot of possession, they pass the ball around nicely, but they don't do a lot with it. And unfortunately, we took that too seriously and kind of stood off them a little bit. And you know, they had one moment of magic, and I just scored like right into the bottom corner off the post. So yeah, they were a team that they were threatening. That they probably should have scored and won it at the end. Key, I forget his first name, had an amazing chance at the end and just skied it over. So that was one of those games that I thought, oh yeah, we're probably a bit lucky to get a point there, and I was impressed by them. Having said that, I still don't think that any team has been as good as I thought they would be, particularly after being in League One for 5 years, and you guys know the standard of League One, League Two and below. Like, you would think it would be a massive chasm between that and the champ, but there's better players and there might be people that pass it around a bit nicely and it's not so hoofball. But actually, I don't think any team has really made me that scared, to be honest. Like, Ipswich and Swansea are up there, but yeah, no one's really terrified me that much, to be honest.
Until the mighty Wrexham, obviously, on Saturday.
We've
been definitely, definitely. I say. How do you see it going then? I gave my prediction on the main podcast, but how do you see Saturday panning out? Because defensively, you are, you're up there with one of the best teams in the league defensively. So it is going to be tough to break you down. But obviously, the last time Wrexham played at home, they go and knock off Coventry and showed what Kiefer Moore and Josh Windass can do when they're on song. So how do you think it might play out?
It's a hard one, really, because I think gathering from what I have seen of you guys like teams that will just have the possession and pass it around nicely and all this, that, and the other, and then you could go at them. Whereas we're exactly the same. We like playing teams like that. So I don't know. Either we're going to cancel each other out or our defence is going to, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I think we both have it as in us to score, despite your 0-0 with Pompey last night. I think maybe the Charlton fan of me wants to say a 2-1. But I think realistically it's probably a 1-1.
Well, Nath, it's a real difficult one, isn't it? Because, I mean, thankfully, you won't be the most hated Nathan in Wrexham this weekend, which makes a nice change. But in terms of the Charlton game, it's difficult because I think there's a perception that because we beat them for promotion last season, they came up through the playoffs. You kind of think, oh, we're ahead of them because we were ahead of them last season. But they took a different sort of approach. Their recruitment was signing players who had looked good in League One and the Championship previously. I think they've done some real good business. Sonny Carey looks excellent. They've got Charlie Kellman, someone that we sort of said might do a job for Wrexham as well. How do you feel about this one? Because part of me says Charlton at home and what that game means in our history now is probably easier to get up for than Pompey away was anyway. And I'm actually more confident for Saturday than I would have been for Wednesday at the start of the week. But Charlton are doing really, really well.
Defensively, they're really, really good. You know, players like Lloyd Jones. I mean, James Bree was a really, really smart pickup. You know, they are just difficult to score against. You know, West Brom couldn't really get a tune out of them, and obviously Charlton go and nick it late on with Sonny Carey, 95th minute, 96th minute winner. You know, and when you are so defensively resolute, you're always going to have a chance, right? Like, you know that you don't need to be, they are not the most dynamic team going forward, but they are a good team. And like, as Tash was saying, you know, it's maybe been a surprise on the outside, but they've been solid. They've been building quite quietly. And if anything, if I was Nathan Jones, and if I was the most hated man in Wrexham, which I would know nothing about, obviously, but I would say that it's actually helpful that Birmingham and Wrexham get a lot of the attention. It's helpful that Charlton were kind of, well, like maybe they'll survive, but they're being projected 19th, 20th. You know, it's helpful that the pressure is on Birmingham. The pressure is on Wrexham to a degree, well, much more to a degree than it is on Charlton. Nathan Jones, experienced at the level, has been in the level more recently than Phil Parkinson. Chris Davis, it's new to him with Birmingham. He doesn't mind being the pantomime villain. If anything, I'd say he embraces it. And that'll rub off on your players. And like a lot of things, you start well and winning is contagious. And yeah, Charlton have exceeded a lot of expectations externally. Internally, I'm sure they realised what a good group they have, you know, and going and getting players like Harvey Nibbs, and they've had a lot of late winners, Charlton, which tells me that they're defensively resolute and they can score in stoppage time, score very late on. So, yes, I would say I'm confident. Probably more confident like you. We had this conversation over some barbecue meat, which was our idea of fun in Portsmouth, about, you know, Charlton at home. It doesn't feel too long ago that we had that promotion game, and you can feel that, and the kind of the whole circus thing, and Parker gassed about that, and I'm sure the players will be reminded, those that were there, what a great day it was against Charlton, and we completely blew them away. But this is a different context, you know, completely different game. I would say it's much easier to get roused up for a promotion clincher. You know, there's so much in that day. It's difficult to replicate that cocktail, you know, in early November against a team that is above you in the table.
Do you start Ollie Rathbone just for vibes?
No, I don't.
Or?
I do love doing things for vibes, but no, I don't. I don't start Ollie Rathbone. Unfortunately, but he's making his way back. He'll get there. I've no doubt about that. But yeah, I mean, you know what it is, though? I think you get that barnstorm against Coventry. You kind of come back down to earth a little bit with a solid, if unspectacular, display Portsmouth. Like I say, good point in my mind, but I'm just saying optically, it's not the kind of, you've not backed it up with another really impressive win, have you? So if anything, going back to the racecourse, I kind of hope, because the away crowd is different, right? The away crowd at Portsmouth was, 700 odd, which was a really good effort. I saw there was quite a bit online from Portsmouth fans about how pathetic Wrexham's support was and everything. Let's just see how many come up to the racecourse not to play the attendance police, but I honestly tip my hat to everyone who went down. It was a real slog there to get there, no matter if you're coming from London or Surrey or Wrexham or wherever you came from. We bumped into a bloke who'd come from West Kirby to go to the game.
Yeah.
It's a real slog. And people taking 2 days off work to do it and, unpaid time off and stuff. So people were really committed there. So I don't want to hear anything about, so-and-so brought more or that they should have brought more. And I've got so irritated by that point. I've kind of lost my train of thought on Charlton. What I will say though, Charlton, I hope that those are at home who don't go away still have that feeling of Coventry. And when we start against Charlton, it's that same energy, that same verve that we had to finish against Coventry in the stands. And if we have that, then, anything's possible.
As we said last week as well, that the Coventry game is the standard setter now. That's a stand. We saw Wrexham at the worst, we saw them at the best, and this week was going to be the week, hopefully, where on and off the pitch we can really see just where we're at. We know what we're capable of at both ends of the spectrum. Now go lay out that marker and show that consistency. And Charlton's a chance to do that. Hopefully, it's another cracking home atmosphere. We can really make the Kairos a fortress again, and just bring it on. I think it's a really fascinating game. We have to make our predictions, Nate. Like I said, I was more confident for the Charlton game than the Portsmouth game. So I'm gonna go 2-0 Wrexham, I think that I know Charlton don't concede many goals, but this is another chance for us to make that statement. And that international break could feel very long if we don't do it. But like I said, almost regardless of what happens this weekend, I actually think Wrexham have already taken more points than I thought we would have done from the last 5 games, including the Charlton game. I thought we probably would have been on about 7. We've got 8 already. Obviously, we don't believe in free hits. It's a home game against Charlton Athletic and a chance to put 3 more points on the board and a chance for us to solidify, at very least, a sort of a mid-table standard for the rest of the season. Nath, 2-0 from me. What are you saying?
I'm going to try to will it into existence. A 1-0 win. I think defensively looking good right now with Hyam. And I actually think he will go with Hyam, Scar and Max again. I don't think he will change that, not on the back of a clean sheet. But I'm going to manifest a 1-0 win with Lewis O'Brien scoring the winner from a 1-on-1. And I can look foolish and I don't care. The graphic can come back to haunt us and he can lift up his T-shirt and that silly graphic I made can be on it and he can, put all sorts of profanity on there if he wants. But I'm going to hope that Lewis O'Brien scores. You just want to see one hit the back of the net. And then hopefully he's away. So I'm going to go 1-0. Charlton are very, very good defensively. It isn't going to be a really open game, I don't think, personally. So I think it might be a set play where if it's not O'Brien, maybe Kiefer. But I think it will just be a really, really close game. And hey, 1-0, 5-0, they all count just the same. So let's wait and see. I know Tash is confident. We're confident. It'll be a good one. It'll be a good occasion on Saturday.
Bring it on. And whatever happens this weekend, we will be back next week. It'll just be the one show next week. I'm sorry, we have been spoiling you lately with these 2 shows a week. We'll see if we can continue those in the winter months. Thank you so much, though, to all of you tuning in wherever you are in the world. Your support means everything to us. It's the reason we do the podcast. It's the reason we can go and watch ourselves play in Portsmouth on a Wednesday night. Like, we appreciate it so much. Thank you as well to Red 10 People Development for their continued support of the podcast, and to Wrexham based bands Hypnotic for the music, the stings that they love putting together for us, and we really love having them as part of it as well. So take care, back the boys, make some noise, and we will see you again next time.
The Wrexham AFC podcast with Nathan Salt and Rich Faye.